The vast emptiness of space surrounded the Caridian fleet. 27 ships drifted slowly, their normally bright engine lights now dim and flickering. On the command bridge of the largest vessel, the Voral, Captain Nara stared at the status reports with growing concern. "How much longer can we maintain life support?" she asked, her four eyes blinking in sequence, a sign of stress among her species. Officer Trell checked the figures again. 14 days at current power levels, Captain. Maybe 16 if we shut down non-essential sections. Captain Nara's gray skin paled slightly. 14 days to find a solution or watch her people, 8,000 refugees, die slowly in the cold vacuum of space. The fleet had been traveling for nearly a year, ever since their homeworld began its final death throes. They had hoped to reach the colony worlds in the Mendari system, but the unexpected gravitational anomaly had changed everything. "The engineering teams have tried everything," said Commander Vex, her second in command. "The propulsion crystals were completely shattered by the anomaly. Without them, we cannot generate the energy needed for faster-than-light travel." Nara nodded grimly. "And our distress signals?" No response, Communications Officer Zereth reported. "This sector appears uncharted. We may be the first to pass through this region." The bridge fell silent. Their situation was dire. The Caridians were not explorers but refugees, carrying what remained of their civilization after their sun had begun to expand unexpectedly. Scientists, families, artists, and workers, the last of their kind, all packed into these failing ships. "Captain," Zereth suddenly straightened at his console. "I'm detecting an unusual signal." Nara moved quickly to his station. "What kind of signal?" "It appears to be communications traffic. A lot of it. Coming from the nearby star system." Zereth's antenna twitched with excitement. The patterns suggest an advanced civilization. Hope and fear battled in Nara's mind. In their long journey, the Caridians had encountered 3 other spacefaring species. None had been friendly. The Voltar had fired upon them immediately. The Drex had demanded payment for safe passage. The Marin had simply ignored their pleas for help. "Could it be the Drex?" Commander Vex asked. Zereth shook his head. "No, the signal patterns are entirely unfamiliar. A species we haven't encountered before." Nara paced the bridge slowly. "We have no choice. Prepare the scout ship. We must investigate." 4 hours later, the fleet's fastest remaining vessel, barely larger than a shuttle, prepared to depart. Pilot Jax ran through the final checks while Science Officer Alara calibrated the sensors. "Remember," Captain Nara told them, "your mission is reconnaissance only. Determine if this species might help us, but do not reveal our full situation. Unless absolutely necessary, we cannot risk another Voltar incident." Jax nodded grimly. 3 ships had been lost in that encounter. "May the stars guide you," Nara said, touching her forehead in the traditional blessing. The scout ship departed, its small engines pushing it toward the distant star. Behind it, the Caridian fleet continued to drift, their power reserves dropping with each passing hour. On the scout ship, Ilara monitored the increasing signal traffic as they approached the system. "It's remarkable," she told Jax. "The communications suggest a planet with billions of individuals. Their technology seems less advanced than ours in some ways, yet surprisingly sophisticated in others." Jax kept his focus on piloting. "Can you translate any of it?" "Not yet. Their language patterns are unlike anything in our databases, but I'm detecting regular space traffic in the system. This species has definitely achieved spaceflight." 3 days later, they reached the outer edges of the star system. 8 planets orbited the yellow star, but it was the 3rd planet that captured their attention. Blue and green, teeming with life and artificial satellites. "Look at all those orbital structures," Alara said in wonder. "They must have hundreds of satellites and stations." A sudden alert sounded. "We're being scanned," Jax reported. "Something is approaching from the 4th planet. Fast." On their view screen, a vessel appeared, sleek and white with blue markings. It was smaller than their largest ships, but clearly built for speed and maneuverability. Strange markings on its hull read, USS Dauntless. "They've detected us," Alara said unnecessarily. The alien ship adjusted its course, moving to intercept them. Jax tensed, ready to retreat. "Wait," Alara said. "They're broadcasting something." The communication system crackled with unfamiliar sounds, the alien language. Alara worked frantically at the translation matrix. I think they're greeting us," she said in surprise. The alien vessel now kept pace with them, maintaining a respectful distance. No weapons appeared to be active. "Should we respond?" Jax asked. Alara hesitated, then activated the universal greeting sequence, a mathematical pattern that any advanced species would recognize as artificial and deliberate. The response was immediate. The alien ship transmitted a similar sequence, followed by simple mathematical equations. They're establishing a communication baseline, Alara realized. They want to talk. Over the next several hours, the rudimentary communication developed. The aliens called themselves humans and their planet Earth. Their ship was part of something called United Space Fleet. "Remarkable," Alara said. "They've established a basic translation matrix in just hours. Their computational abilities are impressive. Eventually, simple messages could be exchanged. The humans requested permission to approach closer. After consulting with Captain Nara via long-range communication, Jax agreed. As the human ship drew, alongside they received a visual transmission. On their screen appeared a creature unlike any they had seen. Pinkish tan skin, only 2 eyes, and hair on top of its head. It wore a blue uniform with silver markings. "I am Captain Frank Miller, of the USS Dauntless," the creature said. The translation still rough but understandable. "On behalf of Earth, I welcome you to our solar system." Alara and Jax exchanged glances. The greeting seemed genuine, with none of the hostility they had come to expect from other species. "We are Caridians," Alara replied carefully. "I am Science, Officer Alara. We come in peace." "May I ask your purpose in our system?" Miller asked. Jax and Alara hesitated. Captain Nara had warned them to be cautious, but something about these humans seemed different. "We are scouts," Alara said finally. "Our fleet—" She stopped, unsure how much to reveal. "Your fleet?" Miller prompted. Alara took a deep breath. "Our fleet is stranded, damaged. We were passing through nearby space when we encountered an anomaly that disabled our propulsion systems." Miller's expression changed, showing what they would later learn was concern. "How many ships? How many people are affected?" 27 ships. 8,000 people, Jax said quietly. There was a brief consultation among the humans on their bridge. Then Miller faced them again. "Science Officer Alara, we would like to offer assistance. With your permission, we can rendezvous with your fleet and assess how we might help." Jax stared in disbelief. Alara's antenna quivered with surprise. "You would help us? Strangers?" she asked. Miller seemed confused by the question. "Of course, that's what people do." As the Dauntless prepared to follow them back to the stranded fleet, Alara sent an urgent message to Captain Nara. "We have made contact with a species called humans. They have offered help freely, with no demands. In all our travels, we have never encountered anything like them." The scout ship turned, leading the way back to the waiting fleet. For the first time in many months, they carried something precious with them. Hope. Captain Nara could hardly believe her eyes as the small human vessel approached her fleet. The USS Dauntless looked tiny next to the massive Caridian ships, yet it moved with confidence. On the main screen of the Voral's bridge, Captain Frank Miller's face appeared again, now speaking through a more refined translation system. "Captain Nara, we've completed our initial scans of your fleet. The damage is extensive, but we believe we can help." Nara's 4 eyes blinked in sequence as she studied the human. Their species looked so fragile, soft skin, no protective scales or plates, only 2 eyes. Yet they had offered assistance without hesitation. "Captain Miller, we are grateful, but I must ask, What do you want in return? Miller seemed confused by the question. We don't require payment for humanitarian aid, Captain. That's not how we operate. The Caridian officers exchanged glances. Such behavior defied everything they had experienced in their journey. I've contacted Earth Command, Miller continued. 2 engineering vessels are already en route to our position. They should arrive within 48 hours. In the meantime, we'd like to send over some supplies and technical teams to assess your most critical systems. Nara hesitated. Allowing aliens aboard their vessels went against security protocols. Commander Vex leaned close. Captain, we don't know if we can trust them, he whispered. We have little choice, she replied quietly. Our life support systems will fail long before we can repair the ships ourselves. She turned back to the screen. We accept your offer, Captain Miller. 6 hours later, the first human shuttle docked with the Voral. The airlock cycled, and 5 humans in blue uniforms stepped onto the Caridian ship. Leading them was a woman with dark hair pulled back tightly. Chief Engineer Sofia Martinez, she introduced herself, making the human gesture of extending a hand, then awkwardly pulling it back when she realized the Caridians didn't share this custom. My team is ready to begin work immediately. Nara assigned Officer Trell to escort the humans. As they walked through the ship's corridors, many Caridians stopped to stare. Few had ever seen aliens up close, and none had seen humans before. In engineering, Martinez examined the damaged propulsion crystals with growing interest. Fascinating technology, she said, scanning the shattered components. These crystals channel energy in ways our science has only theorized about. Trell watched nervously. Can you repair them? Martinez shook her head. No, we don't have the ability to recreate these. But I think we might be able to adapt some of our technology to work with your systems. While the engineers worked, another human team led by a man named Alan Reyes distributed emergency supplies to the refugee ships. They brought food synthesizers, portable power units, and medical supplies. On the smallest ship, which housed mostly families with children, a human doctor named Lisa Wright discovered something unexpected. She was treating a young Caridian with respiratory distress when she noticed the child was fascinated by her hair. Would you like to touch it? She asked gently. The child reached out tentatively, touching the strange strands. Soon, other children gathered around, their fear of the aliens forgotten. By the end of the day, Wright had Caridian children following her everywhere, asking questions about Earth and humans. Back on the Voral, Captain Miller met with Captain Nara to discuss their situation more thoroughly. Your people are refugees, Miller said. It wasn't a question. Nara nodded slowly. Our home system's star became unstable. We had very little time to evacuate. These ships carry what remains of our civilization. And your destination? The Mendari system. We believed it had planets that could support our biology. But now... She gestured helplessly at the status reports. Miller was quiet for a moment. There may be suitable planets in Earth-controlled space. Once your ships are repaired, we could discuss settlement options. Nara stared at him in disbelief. You would share your territory with us? Just like that? Earth has several terraformed worlds with minimal populations. And frankly, Captain, we've been hoping to make peaceful contact with other intelligent species for generations. Your arrival, while unfortunate in circumstances, is something many humans would consider historic. Not everyone shared Miller's enthusiasm. In the ship's security section, Security Chief Verax watched the humans with suspicion. He had served in the military before the evacuation and had seen what desperate species could do to each other. They must have some hidden motive, he told his deputy. No species helps another without benefit to themselves. Perhaps their benefit is diplomatic, his deputy suggested. An alliance with us? Varax snorted. What could they gain from allying? With homeless refugees, no, they want our technology. Those propulsion crystals, even damaged, they're more advanced than anything these humans have. On the second day, the engineering ships USS Horizon and USS Venture arrived. They were larger than the Dauntless, clearly designed for complex repair operations. With them came more engineers, led by a man named Peter Daniels. Daniels met with Martinez, and together they presented their plan to Captain Nara. "We can't repair your crystals," Daniels explained, "but we believe we can create a hybrid system using our fusion technology linked to your existing energy network. It won't be as efficient as your original drives," Martinez added, "but it should give your ships enough power for both life support and limited propulsion." "How limited?" Nara asked. "You won't achieve faster than light travel," Daniels admitted. "But you could reach the nearest habitable planet in our system within 2 months. Communications Officer Zirith had been working closely with the humans on translation and cultural exchange. He stepped forward now. "Captain, I've been studying their star charts. They have a planet called New Terra that appears compatible with our biology. The humans have only established a small research station there. It's a terraforming project still in its early stages," Miller explained. "But the atmosphere and gravity are already within parameters that should be comfortable for your people." Commander Vex looked skeptical. "And Earth would just give us this planet?" "Not give," Miller clarified. "Share. We propose a joint colony. Your people have agricultural techniques that could be valuable on a developing world, according to what Officer Zirith has shared with us." The proposal spread quickly through the fleet. For the first time since leaving their homeworld, the refugees had real hope. Children who had known nothing but ship corridors their whole lives asked their parents what a sky looked like. But in the lower decks of the Voral, Security Chief Varax gathered his most trusted officers. "We cannot trust these humans so easily," he told them. "If their technology can power our ships, then we should take it by force if necessary. Once we have what we need, we can find our own planet, away from alien influence." One of his officers looked troubled. "But they've shown no hostility." "Not yet," Varax replied. "But history teaches us that no good comes from depending on the mercy of strangers." As work on the hybrid propulsion system continued, no one noticed Varax's officers quietly studying the human technology, making their own plans. The future of both species might depend on whose vision prevailed. Work on the hybrid propulsion system progressed quickly. The human engineers had set up a temporary workshop in the largest cargo bay of the Voral. Caridian technicians gathered around, watching with growing interest as the humans assembled strange equipment. Engineer Sofia Martinez directed the operation, her hands moving confidently over the complex components. Beside her worked technician Relk, the most senior of the Caridian engineers. "Your approach is unlike anything I've seen," Relk admitted, watching Martinez connect a fusion regulator to a Caridian power conduit. "We would never have considered using magnetic containment fields in this way," Martinez smiled. "Sometimes fresh eyes see different solutions. Your crystal technology is far more elegant than our fusion systems, but we have to work with what we have." Nearby, Peter Daniels instructed a mixed team of humans and Caridians on calibrating the energy flow between the two technologies. Despite the language barrier, they developed a system of hand signals and simple diagrams to communicate technical concepts. On the third day, Captain Nara invited Captain Miller and his senior officers to share a meal in the Voral's community hall. It was the first formal social exchange between the species. The humans had brought food from their ship, while the Caridians prepared simple dishes from their dwindling supplies. "Our medical team has confirmed your food is safe for us," Miller said, carefully trying a purple paste that Caridians considered a delicacy. Surprisingly compatible biology. Dr. Lisa Wright sat next to a Caridian elder named Sora, who had been a teacher before the evacuation. "The children are adapting quickly to your presence," Sora told her. "They call you the soft ones because of your hair," Wright laughed. "On our world we have animals called cats with fur much softer than our hair. The children would love them." "Will there be these cats on New Terra?" asked a small voice. A young Caridian child had been listening nearby. "I don't know," Wright said kindly. "But if not, perhaps we could bring some someday." The child nodded seriously before being called away by its parent. "They have known nothing but these ships their entire lives," Sora explained sadly. "A planet, with open spaces and natural light. It is hard for them to even imagine. In another section of the hall, communications officer Zirith and the human linguist Olivia Grant were deep in conversation. They had spent days working together on improving the translation system. "Your language is fascinating," Grant told him. "The way you use tonal shifts to indicate emotional context. It's similar to some Earth languages, but much more complex." "Yet you learned it so quickly," Zirith noted. "Your species has a remarkable facility for communication." Grant shrugged. "Necessity. Earth has thousands of languages. Learning to communicate across barriers is something we've had to master." The meal was interrupted when Engineer Martinez hurried into the hall, her face glowing with excitement. She approached the captain's table. "We've done it," she announced. "The first test of the hybrid system was successful. We can begin installing the units on all ships within 2 days." A cheer went up from the assembled Caridians. For many, it was the first hopeful news in months. Security Chief Verax watched from a corner, his expression unreadable. When the celebration died down, he approached Captain Nara. "May I speak with you privately, Captain?" Nara nodded and they moved to a quiet area of the hall. "I believe we should reconsider our options," Verax said in a low voice. "Now that we understand the human technology, we could adapt it ourselves. We don't need to follow them to their planet." Nara's 4 eyes narrowed. "What are you suggesting, Security Chief?" "Simply that we thank them for their help, then set our own course once repairs are complete. The Mendari system is still an option. The Mendari system is 6 months away at the speeds these hybrid engines can manage," Nara reminded him. "Our supplies won't last that long." "Then we take what we need from the humans," Verax said, his voice barely above a whisper. "They have resources. Their ships carry food, medicine, tools." "Enough," Nara cut him off. "We are not raiders, Verax. We are refugees seeking a new home. The humans have offered us sanctuary with no conditions. We will not repay their kindness with theft." Verax stiffened. "I am thinking of our people's future, Captain. Can we truly trust these aliens? What if their hospitality turns once we reach their territory? We would be at their mercy." Nara looked across the room at the humans and Caridians working side by side. "I believe we can trust them, and even if there is risk, we will face it with honor." The next morning, installation of the hybrid propulsion systems began on all 27 ships. Human and Caridian work teams moved between vessels, coordinating the complex operation. The mood throughout the fleet was lighter than it had been since the evacuation from their homeworld. On the smallest ship, the nursery vessel, Technician Relk and Engineer Martinez worked together to modify the energy distribution system. "These conduits are more delicate than the others," Relk explained. "This ship was designed for families, not long-distance travel." Martinez nodded, carefully adjusting her approach. As they worked, a small group of Caridian children gathered to watch. One of them, braver than the rest, approached Martinez. "Will your machine make the lights stop flickering?" the child asked. Martinez smiled. "That's the plan. And it should. Make the air cleaner, too." The child considered this. "My parent says we'll see a sky soon. A real one, not just pictures." "That's right," Martinez said. "New Terra has a beautiful sky. Blue, like Earth's, but with hints of purple at sunset." The child's eyes widened at the concept. Unknown to them, in the cargo bay of the Voral, 3 security officers loyal to Verax were studying the hybrid propulsion designs. They had copied the plans while pretending to assist with inventory. "Humans store additional fusion components on their engineering vessel," one of them reported. "If we could access them, we could potentially build more units ourselves." Verax nodded slowly. "Continue monitoring their activities. Learn everything you can about their technology, but take no action yet." That evening, Captain Miller received a message from Earth Command. His communications officer, a young man named Jason Beck, delivered the news. "Sir, we've been authorized to escort the Caridian fleet to New Terra. A diplomatic team will meet us there to formalize the settlement agreement." Miller smiled. "Excellent. Inform Captain Nara immediately." As Jason headed to the shuttle bay, he passed the engineering team returning from their day's work. They looked tired but satisfied. "The installations are almost complete," Martinez reported when she saw him. "Another day, maybe two." But as she spoke, the lights throughout the ship suddenly flickered. A moment later, alarms began to sound. "What's happening?" Jason asked. Martinez was already checking her equipment. "Something's wrong with the main power grid. The solar monitoring system is showing massive flare activity from the local star. Outside, the normally placid yellow star they had been orbiting was erupting with energy. A massive solar flare, many times larger than predicted, was heading directly toward the vulnerable fleet. The massive solar flare raced toward the fleet, a wall of deadly radiation and charged particles. On the bridge of the Voral, alarms sounded as Officer Trell reported the situation. "Impact in 17 minutes. Our shields can't withstand this level of radiation." Captain Nara turned to Captain Miller, who had been on the Voral for a status meeting when the alarms began. "Can your ships withstand this?" Miller shook his head grimly. "Not completely. Our shields are better against radiation, but the electromagnetic pulse will damage our systems too." He activated his communicator. "All human vessels, this is Captain Miller. Emergency Protocol Sierra 9. Move to shield positions around the Caridian refugee ships. Priority to the nursery vessel." Without hesitation, the 3 human ships moved to protective positions. The USS Dauntless positioned itself above the nursery ship, while the engineering vessels spread out to cover as many Caridian ships as possible. "What are they doing?" Commander Vex asked in confusion. "They're using their ships as shields," Nara realized, her voice filled with disbelief. Miller was already coordinating with his crew. "Martinez, what's the status of the hybrid propulsion systems?" Engineer Martinez's voice came through the communicator. 6 ships have fully operational systems. The others are in various stages of installation. Can any of them move? Maybe 3 or 4 could manage emergency propulsion, but not far and not fast. Miller turned to Nara. "We need to move as many people as possible to the ships with working engines. They should move behind the local moon for protection." Nara immediately began issuing orders. "Begin emergency evacuation of ships without propulsion. Priority to children and elders." Throughout the fleet, chaos erupted as Caridians rushed to gather essential belongings. Human crew members helped guide them to shuttles and transport vessels. On the nursery ship, Dr. Wright organized the evacuation of the children. "Stay together, hold hands in pairs," she called over the noise as small Caridians clutched their few possessions. In engineering, Martinez and Relk worked frantically to stabilize the power grid on the Voral. "If the main power core overloads during the flare, the radiation will breach containment," Relk explained, his hands moving quickly over the controls. "We need to create a bypass," Martinez said. "Channel the surge away from the critical systems." Security Chief Verax suddenly appeared with 4 of his officers. "What's happening?" he demanded. Martinez didn't look up from her work. "Solar flare headed our way. We're trying to prevent a core breach." Verax studied the situation, then made a decision. "My team will help. We've studied your technology." Martinez glanced at him in surprise, then nodded. "We need to reroute these power conduits. Can your people handle the junction boxes on level 3? "Yes," Verax said. "Zarin, Kelv, go." 2 of his officers rushed off to help. For now, at least, their suspicions were set aside in the face of a common threat. On the bridge, the countdown continued. "Flare impact in 8 minutes, Trell announced. Communications Officer Zerith turned from his console. "Captain, I'm receiving reports that the evacuation vessels can't reach all the ships in time." Nara's heart sank. Some of her people would face the flare with minimal protection. "The nursery ship is fully evacuated," Zerith continued. "But ships 12 through 17 have no transport capacity." Captain Miller stepped forward. "Our shuttles can reach them. Beck, coordinate with the Dauntless. Launch all available shuttles to ships 12 through 17. "But sir," Beck protested, "if our shuttles are away from our ships during the flare, they'll be badly damaged," Miller finished. "I know. Do it anyway." Human shuttles launched, from all 3 vessels racing against time to reach the unprotected Caridian ships. Inside the Caridian vessels, frightened refugees watched through viewports as the small human craft approached. On Ship 15, a family huddled together as the airlock opened and 2 human pilots rushed in. "We can take 12 per trip." One called through the translation device. "Quickly!" In engineering, Martinez and Relk had completed their bypass when an energy surge hit the Voral. "That's just the leading edge," Martinez warned. "The main flare is still coming." Relk checked the readouts. "The bypass is holding, but just barely. We need more power to maintain the magnetic containment field." Varax, who had been helping stabilize the power relays, looked up. "The weapons systems, they have independent power cells we could repurpose." Martinez nodded. "Good thinking. Can you access them?" "Yes, but I'll need authorization from Captain Nara." When contacted, Nara didn't hesitate. "Do it. Survival is our priority now." With 4 minutes until full impact, the evacuation continued. 3 Caridian ships with functioning propulsion had moved behind the moon, carrying hundreds of refugees. Human shuttles ferried more to the larger vessels with stronger shields. On the bridge of the Voral, Miller received a call from the captain of the USS Horizon. "Sir, we've got a problem. Our primary shield generator is fluctuating. We can't maintain protection over ships 21 and 22. Miller turned to Nara. "How many people on those ships?" "Over 300, she replied, her voice tight with worry. Without hesitation, Miller opened a channel to his ship. "Dauntless, this is Captain Miller. Adjust position to cover ships 21 and 22. "But sir," came the response, "that would leave the Voral partially exposed." "That's an order, Lieutenant. The Voral has the bypass system in place, those other ships don't." As the Dauntless moved to protect the vulnerable ships, Miller caught Nara watching him. "You're risking your ship," she said quietly. "We're risking all our ships," he replied simply. "That's what we do." In the final minute before impact, Varax and his team successfully connected the weapon power cells to the containment field generators. Martinez monitored the readings as energy levels stabilized. "It's working," she called out. "Containment fields at 93%. Across the fleet, humans and Caridians braced for impact. Children from the nursery ship, now safely aboard, one of the ships behind the moon, huddled together with their caretakers. "What will happen to the soft ones?" one child asked Sora, the elder teacher. Sora had no answer. She simply held the children close and waited. The flare hit with tremendous force. The human ship's shields glowed brilliant blue as they absorbed the brunt of the radiation. Inside the vessels, systems sparked and failed as the electromagnetic pulse washed over them. On the Voral, the lights flickered and died, plunging the ship into darkness before emergency power engaged. In engineering, Martinez and Relk fought to maintain the bypass as consoles exploded around them. "Reroute through secondary systems," Relk shouted over the noise. Varax pulled an injured human engineer to safety as a power conduit burst nearby. The security chief's skepticism had been replaced by urgent cooperation in the face of disaster. After 3 minutes of intense bombardment, the worst of the flare passed. Damage reports began flooding in from all vessels. On the bridge of the Voral, emergency lights cast an eerie glow as Captain Nara surveyed the situation. Communications were down. Life support was functioning at minimal levels, but they had survived. Beside her, Captain Miller was attempting to contact his ships. "Dauntless, do you read? Horizon? Venture?" After a long moment of static, a voice broke through. "Dauntless here, Captain. We're still here. Shields at 12%, multiple systems down." Miller closed his eyes briefly in relief. "Casualties?" "Assessment ongoing, sir. But we're alive." As systems gradually came back online, the true scope of what had happened became clear. The human ships had taken the worst of the damage, their hulls scorched and systems severely compromised. But they had saved thousands of Caridian lives. In the engineering section, Martinez helped Relk to his feet. Both were injured but alive. "Your people," Relk began, his voice filled with wonder. "You barely knew us, yet you risked everything." Martinez shrugged, wincing at the pain from a burn on her shoulder. "That's what humans do when others need help." Varax approached them slowly. The security chief looked at Martinez with new eyes. "I was wrong about your species," he admitted. "I thought you had hidden motives." Martinez managed a tired smile. "Our motive is pretty simple, actually. We believe everyone deserves help when they need it." As the fleet began recovery operations, something had fundamentally changed. The Caridians no longer saw the humans as strange aliens or potential threats, but as allies who had proven their worth in the most dire circumstances. And the journey to New Terra was just beginning. The journey to New Terra took 63 days. After the solar flare, both human and Caridian ships needed extensive repairs before they could travel. The hybrid propulsion systems had been damaged but not destroyed, and with careful work, the engineers restored them to working condition. Captain Nara stood on the observation deck of the Voral, watching as a blue-green planet grew larger in the view screen. New Terra. After more than a year in space, after losing their homeworld and nearly dying in the endless void, her people had found a new beginning. "It's beautiful," she said quietly. Beside her, Captain Frank Miller nodded. "The terraforming is only about 30% complete, but the southern continent is already quite habitable. Forests, rivers, grasslands, plenty of space for everyone." Over the past 2 months, the relationship between the two species had transformed. What began as a rescue had become a partnership. Throughout the fleet, humans and Caridians had worked side by side, sharing knowledge, solving problems, and even forming friendships. "My people have lived in ships for so long," Nara said. "Many of our children have never stood under an open sky. They don't know what rain feels like." Miller smiled. "They'll learn. And they'll teach us things too. Your agricultural science is decades ahead of ours." On the nursery ship, now flying close to the Voral, Dr. Lisa Wright was helping the children prepare for their new home. She had been showing them pictures of earth animals, plants, and landscapes to prepare them for life on a planet. "Will there be dangers?" one child asked, its 4 eyes wide with concern. "Some," Wright answered honestly. "But nothing we can't handle together. Your parents and our scientists have already made plans to keep everyone safe." In engineering, Martinez and Relk were making final adjustments to the Voral's landing systems. Since the solar flare, they had become an inseparable team, with Relk's deep knowledge of Caridian technology complementing Martinez's human ingenuity. "I still can't believe you managed to convert our atmospheric entry shields to work with your technology," Relk said, shaking his head in admiration. Martinez grinned. "And I can't believe how quickly you learned our computer systems. We make a good team." Security Chief Varax entered the engineering section, nodding respectfully to both of them. The crisis had changed him profoundly. Where once he saw threats and deception, he now saw possibilities. He had become one of the strongest advocates for human-Caridian cooperation. "The landing teams are ready," he reported. "First groups will establish the base camp. Weather conditions are favorable." As New Terra filled more of the view screen, excitement spread throughout the fleet. For the humans, this was a historic moment. The first peaceful settlement with an alien species. For the Caridians, it was salvation, a second chance for their civilization. The fleet entered orbit, and the first shuttles prepared to descend. Captain Nara insisted on being among the first to land, along with a mixed group of human and Caridian specialists who would begin setting up the colony. As her shuttle broke through the cloud layer, Nara pressed her face to the window. Below, vast forests spread out in all directions, interrupted by winding rivers and open meadows. In the distance, snow-capped mountains rose against a sky tinged with purple, just as Martinez had described to the children. The shuttle touched, down in a large clearing. The door opened, and for the first time in many months, Nara felt natural gravity, breathed non-recycled air. Cautiously, she stepped onto the soil of her people's new home. The air was cooler than their homeworld had been, the gravity slightly stronger, but it felt right. Around her, humans and Caridians emerged from the shuttle, many of the Caridians hesitating before taking their first steps on planetary ground. Over the next week, more shuttles arrived, bringing people and supplies. Engineers from both species worked together to build the first structures, temporary shelters that would house everyone until permanent buildings could be constructed. Captain Miller directed the human effort, while Nara coordinated her people. They established a joint council to address the many questions of building a shared colony: land distribution, governance, resource management, and cultural integration. 2 weeks after the first landing, a special shuttle arrived. The youngest, Caridian children, those who had never known life outside the nursery ship, were finally coming to their new home. Dr. Wright and Sora, the elder teacher, had prepared them as best they could, but nothing could truly ready them for the experience. The children stepped out of the shuttle. Their reactions brought tears to many eyes. Some froze in fear at the openness, clutching each other for support. Others immediately ran forward, wanting to touch the grass, the trees, the flowing water of a nearby stream. "It's so big," one child cried, spinning in circles with arms outstretched. "Look up," another shouted, pointing at birds soaring overhead, Earth species introduced during the early terraforming. Varak stood watching the children, his usual stoic expression softened. One of the human officers, Jason Beck, from the Dauntless, approached him. "Quite a sight, isn't it?" Beck said. Varak nodded. "When we left our homeworld, I feared these children would never know anything but metal walls and artificial light. I feared our culture would die in the void of space." He turned to the human. "Your people changed everything for us." Beck shrugged. "Anyone would have helped." "No," Varak said firmly. "Not anyone. In our journey, we encountered 3 other spacefaring species. None offered aid. One attacked us. Another demanded payment we couldn't provide. The third simply ignored our distress calls." He looked back at the playing children. Only humans stopped to help strangers in need. 6 months later, the colony was thriving. The first permanent buildings had been constructed in a style that blended human and Caridian architectural elements. Fields of Caridian crops grew alongside Earth vegetables, the alien agricultural techniques proving remarkably effective on New Terra's soil. In the center of the settlement, a monument had been erected, a simple stone pillar with inscriptions in both human and Caridian languages. It told the story of a fleet stranded in space and the humans who came to help. Captain Nara often visited this monument in the early mornings. On one such day, she found Engineer Martinez already there, looking up at the inscription. "The children have added their own tribute," Nara said, pointing to small handprints, both human and Caridian, pressed into the base of the monument. Martinez smiled. "They're growing up together. No fear, no suspicion, just friendship." "And tomorrow the Joint Research Center opens," Nara added, "our scientists working together to combine our technologies." In orbit above New Terra, the USS Dauntless prepared to depart. Captain Miller would return to Earth to report on the colony's progress and bring back more supplies. But many of the human crew had chosen to stay, finding a new purpose in helping build this unprecedented cooperation between species. As the sun set on New Terra, casting purple and gold light across the settlement, Caridian children played alongside. The few human children who had come with their parents, they ran through fields under an open sky, something that once seemed impossible. And far beyond their solar system, other alien civilizations received reports of this strange partnership. Many dismissed it as temporary or strategic. But a few began to reconsider their isolation, wondering if perhaps there was something special about these humans after all, a species that would stop to help strangers stranded among the stars. John Miller wiped sweat from his brow as he tightened the last bolt on the air filtration system. The maintenance corridor on the Starseeker was cramped and hot, just like every other day aboard the exploration vessel. John had been the ship's maintenance engineer for 3 years now, and he knew every pipe, panel, and problem spot intimately. "Miller, report to the bridge immediately." Captain Lisa Reynolds' voice crackled through his communicator. There was an edge to her voice that John rarely heard. "On my way, Captain," he replied, gathering his tools. Whatever was happening, it must be serious. The corridors buzzed with unusual activity as John made his way to the bridge. Crew members hurried past him, their faces a mix of excitement and worry. When the doors to the bridge slid open, John understood why. On the main view screen was another ship. Unlike anything he had ever seen, it seemed to shimmer with an iridescent glow, its design completely alien to human engineering principles. "Miller?" "Good." Captain Reynolds nodded toward him. Her normally perfect uniform looked like she'd been wearing it for days. "We've made contact." John stared at the screen. "First contact? Real aliens?" "Very real," said Communications Officer Samantha Green. She hadn't looked up from her station in what appeared to be hours. "They call themselves the Zolaxians, and they want to meet us face to face." Captain Reynolds gestured to a seat at the conference table set up at the back of the bridge. "I need you on the welcome team, Miller." John blinked in surprise. "Me? I'm just maintenance. Shouldn't you have diplomats or scientists?" "Our science team will be there," she assured him. "But the Zolaxians specifically requested to meet various crew functions. Their society values technical workers. They want to see how humans approach practical problems." 4 hours later, John found himself in the ship's main conference room. Trying not to fidget in his freshly replicated dress uniform, 5 other crew members, including Captain Reynolds and Samantha Green, waited nervously. The door slid open, and the Zolaxians entered. They were tall, nearly 7 feet, with blue-gray skin that seemed to shimmer under the lights. Their bodies were thin but clearly powerful, with forearms that moved with careful precision. Their faces had large, multifaceted eyes that reminded John of dragonflies back on Earth. The lead Zolaxian stepped forward. A small device on its chest glowed, and words emerged in slightly mechanical English. "Greetings, humans of the Starseeker. I am Chief Diplomat Zelvox of the Zolaxian Cooperative. We welcome you to shared space." Captain Reynolds stepped forward and performed the greeting they had rehearsed. "On behalf of Earth and all humanity, we are honored to meet you." The formal introductions continued, each crew member stating their name and role. When it came to John's turn, he simply said, "John." "Miller, maintenance engineer." The Zolaxians seemed to perk up at this. Zelvox's multifaceted eyes focused intently on him. "The one who maintains the functioning of your vessel? This is a position of great importance in our culture." As the meeting progressed, John noticed the Zolaxians' extreme attention to protocol. Every action seemed carefully considered, every word precisely chosen. They explained their society in methodical detail, a species that valued order, planning, and risk avoidance above all else. Halfway through the meeting, Zelvox's translation device began to emit a high-pitched whine. The alien tapped it with a long finger, looking concerned. "Our apologies. The translation matrix appears to be destabilizing. We will need to return to our vessel to perform the 19-step diagnostic and repair procedure." John's eyes narrowed as he looked at the device. The problem seemed obvious to him. Simple signal interference from the ship's communication array. "Mind if I take a look?" he asked, already reaching for his pocket toolkit that he carried everywhere. Captain Reynolds shot him a warning glance, but Zelvox nodded curiously. John took the small device and popped open its casing with a tiny screwdriver. Inside was technology far more advanced than anything humans had built, but electronics were electronics. He could see where a power coupling had come loose. "Hey, Sam," he called to Samantha Green. "Hold my coffee." He handed his mug to the surprised communications officer, then pulled a paperclip from his pocket. With practiced hands, he straightened. It bent it into a small spring and slipped it between the loose connections. Finding a stick of gum in his other pocket, he chewed it quickly, then used the sticky material to secure the makeshift spring in place. He snapped the casing shut and handed it back to the stunned alien. "Try it now." Zelvox hesitantly accepted the device. The whine had stopped, and when the alien spoke, the translation came through crystal clear. "You repaired complex Zolaxian technology with items from your pocket? Without testing, without approval?" The entire Zolaxian delegation seemed frozen in shock. Captain Reynolds stepped in quickly. "I apologize if Engineer Miller has overstepped. He was simply trying to be helpful." "How long would your repair procedure take?" John asked, genuinely curious. "The standard protocol requires 14 hours for diagnostics, 5 for committee approval and 3 for implementation, Zelvox replied. John couldn't help but grin. Well, mine took about 30 seconds. The meeting continued, but now all the Zolaxians kept their 4 eyes fixed primarily on John. One of them, who had been introduced as their chief safety officer, was furiously making notes on a tablet-like device. As they left, Zelvox approached John directly. Your approach to problem-solving is disturbing yet fascinating. We have never encountered a species that would attempt repairs without extensive testing and safety protocols. Sometimes you just have to try things. John shrugged. The aliens, head tilted in consideration. This hold my coffee procedure. Is this a standard human protocol? John laughed. Something like that. After the Zolaxians departed, Captain Reynolds pulled John aside. Miller, you nearly caused an interstellar incident. They could have seen that as tampering with their technology. But it worked, John replied. And they seemed impressed eventually. Samantha joined them, an amused smile on her face. Actually, they were impressed. Their message to me just now requested all available information on, and I quote, human maintenance procedures and the cultural significance of the Hold My Coffee protocol. Captain Reynolds sighed deeply. Miller, for the next diplomatic meeting, please try to follow the established protocols. No promises, Captain. John grinned. But I'll try. That night, aboard the Zolaxian vessel, Chief Diplomat Zelvox and the safety officer reviewed the meeting recordings. Their disregard for proper procedures is alarming, the safety officer stated. The human called Miller performed a repair with no testing, no validation, and used food items. Yet it worked, Zelvox noted. In the time it would have taken us to begin our diagnostic, he solved the problem. It's dangerous, insisted the safety officer. Perhaps, Zelvox acknowledged, but also potentially valuable. Begin a new research file. Title it, Human Innovation Protocols. And add a special subsection for this Hold My Coffee procedure. I believe we have much to learn from these humans. The safety officer reluctantly made the entry, not realizing this would eventually become the most referenced section in the entire Galactic Safety Manual. 6 months had passed since the first meeting with the Zolaxians. In that time, humanity had been formally invited to join the galactic community, a loose federation of 12 spacefaring species. The Starseeker had returned to Earth, and its crew had become instant celebrities. None more so than John Miller, whose quick fix of alien technology had become the stuff of legend. John stared out the viewport of the diplomatic shuttle as it approached the massive space station orbiting the Zolaxian homeworld. The structure was a marvel of engineering, perfectly symmetrical with not a single panel out of place. Nervous? Asked Samantha Green, who sat beside him. Why me? John sighed. I'm not a diplomat. I'm not even a good public speaker. Samantha smiled. Because you've become a symbol. The Zolaxians specifically requested your presence at the Galactic Safety Conference. Captain Reynolds had selected John and Samantha to represent humanity at this important event. While other human diplomats and scientists would attend various meetings, the two of them had been invited to the main safety panel, a great honor, according to the Zolaxians. The shuttle docked with perfect precision. When the airlock opened, they were greeted by Zelvox, now wearing ceremonial robes with intricate patterns. Engineer Miller, Communications Officer Green. Welcome to Unity Station. We are pleased you could attend this important gathering. John nodded awkwardly. Thanks for inviting us. Zelvox led them through spotless corridors where various alien species moved with careful precision. John noticed how each followed clearly marked pathways on the floor, and no one deviated from their assigned routes. The conference hall was enormous. 12 raised platforms surrounded a central stage, each hosting representatives from a different species. The humans were directed to their platform where several empty seats awaited other human delegates. The Galactic Safety Conference occurs once every 5 cycles, Zelvox explained. Here we establish universal safety standards for interspecies interactions. This year's focus is emergency procedures. John tried to pay attention as the conference began. Representatives from each species gave lengthy presentations about their safety protocols. The Talaxians, a species resembling tall, thin reptiles, spent a full hour describing the proper way to activate an emergency energy field. Before engaging any energy field, a 6-hour safety check must be performed, the Talaxian representative explained. First, one must verify that all 27 subsystems are functioning within acceptable parameters. John felt his eyelids growing heavy. Beside him, Samantha discreetly elbowed him in the ribs. "Stay awake," she whispered. "This is important diplomatic stuff." "It's boring diplomatic stuff," John whispered back. "Who needs 6 hours to check if a switch works?" The presentations continued. The Vendarans, a species of floating jellyfish-like creatures, explained their 18-step evacuation procedure. The Xylorians, who resembled large insects, detailed their risk assessment matrix with 64 possible outcomes. By the 3rd hour, John was struggling to maintain consciousness. Even Samantha was fighting to keep her eyes open. Suddenly, the lights flickered. Then they went out completely. Emergency lights came on, casting the room in a dim red glow. The effect on the gathered aliens was immediate and alarming. The Vendarans began pulsating rapidly. The Talaxians froze in place. From across the room, John could hear various translation devices activating. "Remain calm. Initiate emergency assessment protocol. Begin evacuation sequence alpha." No one actually moved. Each species seemed to be waiting for something. Zelvox approached the human platform. "We are experiencing a power failure. The backup systems should engage automatically, but they appear to be malfunctioning. The emergency committee will convene to address this situation." "How long will that take?" Samantha asked. "The committee must follow proper procedures. Assessment, planning, and implementation will require approximately 4 hours. John looked around at the dim hall. The various delegates were still in their positions, some consulting tablets or communicating in hushed tones. 4 hours? In the dark? John shook his head. "Where's the backup generator located?" Zelvox blinked all 4 of his eyes. "It is in the maintenance level, but access is restricted during emergency situations. Only authorized technicians with proper clearance may." John was already standing. "I'm a maintenance engineer. This is literally my job." "But the protocols." John handed his coffee cup to Samantha. "Hold my coffee. I'll be back in 10 minutes. Before anyone could stop him, John was heading for the exit. Samantha hurried after him. "John, you can't just wander around an alien station." "Watch me," he replied, finding a maintenance access panel near the hall entrance. It was locked with an unfamiliar control panel, but John recognized the basic principles. Every ship or station follows the same basic layout. Power distribution is always at the lowest level. Using his pocket tool, John bypassed the security lock. The panel slid open, revealing a ladder leading down. "You're going to cause an interstellar incident," Samantha warned, but followed him anyway. "Already did that once, might as well make it a habit." They descended through 3 levels before finding what John was looking for. A large room filled with humming equipment. In the center was a device that had to be the backup generator. Its status lights were flashing red. John approached it, cautiously. The design was alien, but the principles of power generation were universal. He quickly located the problem, a simple misalignment in the power coupling. "Looks like the primary connection shifted during the power surge," he explained to Samantha. "The safety system detected it and shut down to prevent damage." "Can you fix it?" John was already working. "It just needs to be realigned and reset." With careful movements, he adjusted the coupling and reset the system. The generator hummed louder, and the lights in the room brightened. Through the speakers, they could hear an announcement in multiple languages. "Power restored. Emergency situation resolved." When they returned to the conference hall, they found all eyes turned toward them. The lights were back on, and the conference had resumed. But instead of continuing with the presentations, the entire hall was watching a replay of John's actions on the main screen. Apparently, the emergency systems had recorded everything. Selvox approached them, accompanied by representatives from several other species. Engineer Miller, you bypassed 7 safety protocols, ignored proper authorization procedures, and manually adjusted critical infrastructure without approval. John swallowed hard. But I fixed it. In 8 minutes and 43 seconds, added a Xylorian representative, its antennae twitching with what might have been excitement. Our models predicted a minimum resolution time of 4 hours using standard procedures. The Vendaran representative floated closer. This hold my coffee technique. It appears to be a human emergency protocol that prioritizes speed over safety. Samantha stepped in. It's more of a cultural expression. It signals that someone is about to do something unconventional. Risky, John added with a slight smile. The aliens conferred among themselves in their own languages. Finally, Selvox turned back to them. The conference must document and study this approach. It is concerning, yet the results cannot be denied. We would like to establish a special committee to analyze human emergency response methods. Samantha nodded diplomatically. We would be honored. As they returned to their platform, John whispered to her, I think I just changed the agenda of the entire conference. You did, she replied quietly. And I'm pretty sure they're going to name it after your little catchphrase. From that day forward, the phrase, "Hold my coffee protocol," began to circulate among the alien delegates. By the end of the conference, it had been officially added to the agenda for next year's meeting, with John Miller scheduled as the keynote speaker. The Galactic Safety Manual would never be the same again. A year passed since the Galactic Safety Conference. Human integration into the wider galactic community had progressed rapidly. Earth ships now regularly visited alien worlds, and alien vessels had become a common sight in Earth's orbit. Trade agreements were signed, cultural exchanges began, and humans found their place among the stars. Proxima Station was the pride of this new cooperation. Built in orbit around a gas giant in the Proxima Centauri system, it served as a massive trading hub where all species could meet, exchange goods, and learn from one another. The station was a marvel of combined technology, with each species contributing their expertise to its construction. Alex Clark wiped sweat from her forehead as she finished her daily inspection of the station's primary coolant system. As the head of the human maintenance team on Proxima Station, she was responsible for making sure the human-built sections ran smoothly. 6 other humans worked under her supervision, maintaining everything from air filtration to power distribution. Her communicator beeped. Alex, we've got a problem. It was Ben Martinez, her second in command. The orbital stabilizers are acting weird. Can you meet me in Control Section 4? On my way, she replied, gathering her tools. Control Section 4 was busy when Alex arrived. Ben stood next to a Zolaxian technician named Krelnar, both staring at a display screen with concern. What's the situation? Alex asked. Ben pointed to the screen. The orbital stabilizers are losing power. We're drifting out of our designated position. Krelnar's translation device spoke in its mechanical voice. We have initiated the standard diagnostic protocol. The assessment committee has been notified and will convene within the hour. Alex looked more closely at the readings. They were dropping fast, too fast for comfort. We don't have an hour. How much drift can this station handle before we hit trouble? The station can operate safely within deviation parameters of 0.05 units, Krelnar explained. We are currently at 0.02 and increasing at a rate of 0.004 per hour. Alex did the math quickly. So we have about 7 hours before we're in danger? Correct. The committee will determine. A loud alarm cut off the Zolaxian's words. Red lights began flashing throughout the control room. Ben checked another screen and his face went pale. That's not right. The drift just jumped to 0.03 in seconds, and it's accelerating. More alarms joined the first. Through the large observation window, Alex could see the gas giant they orbited seemed to be moving, but she knew it was actually the station that was moving, being pulled toward the massive planet. Krelnar was frantically working at the control panel. This is not possible. The models predicted a slow decay. The alien technician activated the station-wide communication system. Emergency alert. All beings proceed to evacuation points according to standard protocols. This is not a drill. Alex grabbed Ben's arm. What happened? Why the sudden change? I don't know, but at this rate we have less than 2 hours before we hit the atmosphere. Alex's mind raced. 2 hours wasn't enough time to evacuate everyone. The station housed over 10,000 beings from various species. And once the station hit the gas giant's atmosphere, it would be torn apart. Can we boost the stabilizers manually? She asked. Krelnar shook its head. The system is in safety lockdown. Only the chief administrator can override, and they are currently in transit from Earth. Ben looked at the controls. There's another way. The auxiliary thrusters could compensate for the drift. The auxiliary system is not designed for orbital stabilization, Krelnar protested. Station design parameters clearly state. Forget the design parameters, Alex interrupted. This is an emergency. We need to try something or everyone dies. The control room was filling with various alien species now, all following their evacuation procedures. A tall Vendaran security officer floated over to them. You must evacuate immediately. All technical personnel must report to escape vessel, designation 4. Alex stood her ground. We can save the station. We just need access to the auxiliary thruster controls. That would violate safety protocols, the Vendaran replied, its tentacles waving agitatedly. The auxiliary systems cannot be modified without proper authorization. Ben stepped forward. Look, we don't have time for this. People are going to die. The security officer moved to block their path to the auxiliary control panel. I cannot permit unauthorized. Ben pulled out his personal tablet and a bottle of carbonated water from his pocket. He quickly unscrewed the cap, took a swig and handed the bottle to Alex. Hold my soda. Before anyone could stop him, Ben splashed some water onto his tablet and pressed it against the security panel by the door. There was a spark, a sizzle, and the security door slid open. The Vendaran security officer recoiled in horror. You damaged station property. This is a violation of Section 47B of the Safety Code. But Ben and Alex were already through the door and running toward the auxiliary control room. Alarms blared throughout the station. Over the speakers, calm voices in multiple languages directed people to evacuation points. But Alex and her team had another plan. The auxiliary control room was empty when they arrived. It was designed as a backup, meant to be used only if the main controls failed completely. Ben immediately sat at the console and began working. We need to reroute power from the secondary systems to the auxiliary thrusters, Alex explained as she opened an access panel in the wall. If we can give them enough juice, we might be able to push back against the drift. The system won't let me override the safety protocols, Ben said, frustrated. It keeps asking for administrator authorization. Alex pulled out a small device from her tool belt, a universal bypass module that she had designed herself. It wasn't strictly regulation, but it had saved her life more than once back on Earth. Try it now, she said after connecting the device to the system. The console lit up with new options. Ben quickly began the power rerouting process while Alex worked on reconfiguring the thrusters. This is crazy, Ben muttered as he worked. The station designers said this was theoretically possible but practically suicidal. Well, we're about to find out which one it is, Alex replied grimly. The door slid open, and Krelnar entered with several other alien technicians. They watched in a mixture of horror and fascination as the humans worked. What you are attempting is not in any approved emergency procedure, Krelnar said, but made no move to stop them. Yeah, well, sometimes you have to improvise, Alex replied, without looking up from her work. After 10 tense minutes, they were ready. The auxiliary thrusters, never designed for this purpose, had been reconfigured to provide stabilizing thrust. Here goes nothing, Ben said and activated the system. The station shuddered. For a moment it seemed like nothing was happening. Then gradually the alarm tones began to change. The flashing red lights turned to yellow, then green. Orbital. Decay halting, announced the station's computer. Stabilization in progress. On the monitors, they could see the drift indicator slowing, then stopping, then beginning to reverse. The station was moving back into its proper orbit. The alien technicians stared in disbelief. Krelnar approached the console, examining the readings. You succeeded, using methods that violate 17 separate safety protocols and bypassing 3 security systems. Alex smiled tiredly. Sometimes that's what it takes. When the manual doesn't cover your situation, you have to write a new one. Word of what had happened spread quickly throughout the station and beyond. The humans who had saved Proxima Station by breaking all the rules became instant celebrities across the galaxy. 2 weeks later, the Galactic Council called an emergency session. The topic? The creation of a special committee to study human problem-solving under pressure. They named it, to the embarrassment of the official human delegates, the Hold My Beer Protocol Committee. The sun was setting when Emily finally reached the old lighthouse. Its white paint was peeling and the windows looked dark and empty. She had been walking for hours, her backpack feeling heavier with each step. The wind blew her hair across her face and she could taste the salt from the sea. For days, Emily had been searching for clues about her grandfather's last journey. He was a sailor who disappeared many years ago, and no one knew what happened to him. Her family had always talked about him in whispers with sad eyes and worried looks. She pulled out the old map from her backpack. It was worn and yellow, with strange marks that her grandfather had made many years ago. The map showed a path that led to this exact spot, the abandoned lighthouse on the rocky coast. Emily knew something important was waiting for her here. As she walked closer, she noticed something strange about the lighthouse. There was a small window on the side that looked different from the others. It seemed newer, and there were marks around it that looked like someone had recently tried to cover something up. Emily's heart started to beat faster. She remembered the stories her grandmother used to tell her about her grandfather. He was an explorer who loved finding hidden things. He always said that the most important secrets were the ones nobody wanted to talk about. She checked her backpack again. Inside was a small metal box her grandmother had given her before she died. The box was old and had strange marks on it. Her grandmother had told her to open it only when she found the lighthouse. The wind was getting stronger, and dark clouds were gathering in the sky. Emily knew she had to make a choice. She could turn back and go home, or she could try to find out what was hidden in this old lighthouse. She walked around the building looking for a way inside. Most of the doors were locked or broken, but she found a small side door that was partially open. It creaked when she pushed it, making a sound that echoed through the empty building. Inside, the lighthouse was dark and cold. Dust covered everything, and old cobwebs hung from the ceiling. Emily used her phone's flashlight to look around. The light showed old furniture, broken maps, and strange objects that looked like they had been left in a hurry. On the wall, she saw an old photograph. It was a picture of her grandfather standing next to another man. They were both wearing sailing clothes and looked very serious. Emily had never seen this picture before. She wondered what story it could tell. Her fingers touched the metal box in her backpack. It felt warm, almost like it was waiting to be opened. Emily knew that whatever was inside might change everything she knew about her family's history. The lighthouse seemed to be watching her, holding on to its secrets. Outside, the wind continued to blow, and the waves crashed against the rocks. Emily took a deep breath. She knew her adventure was just beginning and nothing would be the same after today. She looked around the room one more time. Something was hidden here, something that had been waiting for her to find it. Emily was sure of one thing. She would not leave until she discovered the truth about her grandfather's last journey. The metal box in her backpack felt heavy. It was time to uncover the secrets that had been hidden for so many years. Emily's hands were shaking, but her heart was brave. Whatever happened next would change her life forever. Emily's hands were shaking as she opened the metal box. Inside, she found an old notebook with faded pages. The cover was leather and looked very old. She carefully opened it, afraid the pages might break. The first page had a drawing of a ship. It was not like the ships in history books. This ship looked strange, with weird lines and marks that did not make sense. Next to the drawing, her grandfather had written some words in small, careful writing. "The map is not just a map," the first line read. "It is a key to something bigger." Emily's heart beat faster. She remembered how her grandmother always said, her grandfather was more than just a simple sailor. He loved mysteries and always talked about hidden stories that nobody else knew about. She turned the page. More drawings appeared. They showed different places, a mountain with a strange shape, an island that was not on any normal map, and some lines that looked like a secret code. Emily knew these were not just random drawings. They meant something important. The lighthouse around her felt different now. It was like the old building was watching her, waiting to see what she would do next. Dust danced in the light from her phone's flashlight. Old furniture seemed to hold secrets in their broken wood and faded paint. Another page showed a letter. It was written in her grandfather's handwriting, but parts of it were missing. Some words were torn, and some were hard to read. Emily could make out a few important words: treasure, danger, and must protect. Outside, the wind was getting stronger. Waves crashed against the rocks near the lighthouse. The sound was loud and seemed to match the excitement Emily was feeling. Something big was about to happen, and she could feel it. She continued reading the notebook. Her grandfather wrote about a journey he took many years ago. He talked about a group of people who were looking for something very special. But they were not just looking. They were trying to stop someone else from finding it first. The notebook mentioned a map. But this was not an ordinary map. It was a map that showed something hidden, something that could change the world. Emily remembered the map she had brought with her. Could it be the same one her grandfather talked about? She looked around the lighthouse room. Old things were everywhere, broken chairs, dusty books, and strange objects that looked like they came from different parts of the world. Each item seemed to have a story, just like the notebook in her hands. A sudden noise made her jump. Something moved in the corner of the room. Emily turned her phone's light quickly. It was just an old curtain moving in the wind. But for a moment, she felt like someone was watching her. The notebook had more drawings. They showed people. Some looked like sailors. Some looked like explorers. They all seemed to be part of something big and dangerous. Emily could feel the excitement and fear in her grandfather's writing. One page was different from the others. It had a map drawn in red ink. The map showed a place that did not look like anywhere on Earth. Strange symbols were written around the edges. Emily knew this was important, but she did not understand what it meant. She found a small envelope tucked between the pages. Inside was a key. It was made of old metal and looked very special. The key had strange marks on it. Not like normal keys that open doors. This key looked like it could open something much more important. The lighthouse creaked. Wind came through small holes in the walls. Emily felt cold, but she was too excited to stop reading. Her grandfather's story was coming to life in her hands. Each page showed her something new and mysterious. As she read more, she learned about a secret group her grandfather was part of. They were looking for something that could change everything, but other people wanted to stop them. It was like a big game of hide and seek, but with much higher stakes. Emily knew she had to be careful. The notebook made it clear that some people would do anything to find what her grandfather was protecting. She looked at the key in her hand. What could it open? What secrets was it hiding? The sun was setting outside. Dark shadows filled the lighthouse. Emily knew she had found something big. Her grandfather's story was just beginning, and she was now a part of it. Whatever happened next would change her life forever.